What is up guys, Wraec here with a new video, and today I want to talk about whether or not it's worth it for you to summon Bonnie in this current raid up. And yeah, today the raid up for Bonnie was finally released. She's probably one of the most hyped heroes that we had throughout this entire season. Many people waiting for her, and when this raid up was released, I of course did a live stream, tested everything in depth. We summoned her, brought her to Supreme Plus, plus 10, and tested everything, and thus we can now make a video and talk a lot about it a little bit as kind of a summary, because the live stream is like 2 hours long and didn't want you to have spent all that time watching this when I can give you basically a TLDW quite quickly right here. So what's the special thing about this hero? Well, first of all, she's an A-tier Graveborn. We don't have too many of those. I think many people miss that. When I click on Light Barrier now, we see I have 9 A-tier Light Bearers. If we do the same for Graveborn, we have 4. There are only Sylvina, Nero, Salazar, and Viperion. And to be fair, I only would consider Sylvina really good. Viperion is like okay-ish. Salazar is already kinda meh, and then Nero is completely pointless in my opinion. So we don't really have very good quality in terms of the A tiers there. So having another one right into this faction is probably a pretty good thing already. But what is the special thing about her? Well, to understand Bonnie, you first have to understand 2 abilities. And we have to talk about those before we can hop into the gameplay. So stay with me for that. We were going to go into some PvP and PvE gameplay that is quite impressive in a second. So, first of all, we have this ability, Decay's Reach. This is unlocked if you have only 1 copy of her. Still, my initial assessment that it's pointless to run her with just a single copy stays true, I think. This effect is called Aging. It inflicts a debuff on the rearmost enemy, initially only dealing damage and reducing their haste by 30. Bonnie will prioritize to target the enemy with Afflicted. That is afflicted by Aging. She has a 7 range, so it will be pretty easy for you. And then whenever an allied hero deals magic damage to the enemy afflicted by Aging, the effect is further enhanced and reduces the haste by an extra 10 every time it's enhanced. So pretty good already. We can enhance it up to 2 times, which will reduce the haste by 50. Pretty massive haste reduction there. Once this Aging reaches its maximum stack, we get a nice bit of attack reduction, 30% enhanced by skill power, and the enemy will take 100 damage every 1 second. So while initially the debuff isn't really that insane, 30 haste reduction is okay. And once we really max it out, we get 50 haste reduction, 30 attack reduction, and we deal 100 damage every second, which is actually a lot of damage. Not too bad at all. If you think about it, we can inflict that on all of the 5 enemies through the Mythic Plus ability that we'll take a look at in a second, and then you basically have 500% damage every single second, which quickly racks up to be an enormous amount, so not too bad at all. And then I already said it, we need to spread it somehow, and surprisingly enough, through her base kit that you get when you have like 1 copy of her, that doesn't work at all. You can't spread that at all. This ability just triggers when a battle starts, so if you defeat the enemy that has Aging on them, it's just gone until you reach Mythic Plus. Then it becomes when the Aging reaches maximum stacks or the Aged enemy is defeated, we can spread it to 1 unafflicted enemy. So that is already pretty good. At plus 10, however, this becomes 2 unafflicted enemies. So essentially, we just have to hit the enemy that has Aging 2 times with magic damage, and then we are spreading it to 2 more enemies. And that is kind of the point where it becomes a little bit complicated. Like hitting the first enemy like 2 times with magic damage is fairly easy, but then you want to hit the other 2 as well, and then you kind of need magic damage heroes on your team. So kind of required to run her is to run her with somebody that deals magic damage and kind of hits a lot of heroes. So now you understand the basic principle. Let's see how that turns out and works in PvP. In PvP, if we take a look at that and go into my records, I kind of struggled a little bit to find a good team, but that is quite normal for experimenting. We try to max out her damage, and thus we use 2 heroes with magic damage. First of all, Tazi, and then we also use Talene. Both pretty much deal AoE magic damage. And you can see it results in quite a fair bit of damage dealt by Bonnie. So 4 billion damage right there. Let's watch the replay. Let's take a look at that. So you see, Bonnie was the backmost hero, the rearmost hero, and got hit with this debuff. It's shown by a little greenish smoke, we could say. We hit the enemy Bonnie with our Tazi. Keep in mind, when Bonnie is defeated, her debuff actually stays in game. So it's not removed if you defeat the enemy Bonnie. The heroes that are inflicted at that point will keep that debuff. So that is something to keep in mind. And now we kind of inflict it on the rest of the enemy team. You can see there's already one on the Fresto, on this Fresto. So we kind of have a lot of enemies already under our aging effect, trying to level that up. And you can see this on this hero, it's already leveled up because we have the attack debuff right there that is applied once it's max. And now basically Bonnie starts dealing damage, and it's symbolized by those small numbers there, small magic damage numbers that plop up all the time, every second basically on every enemy that is inflicted. And while you, honestly, when you watch a fight, don't really see her deal damage, it kind of becomes a big number at the end. So not bad at all in terms of dealing damage in PvP. Kind of a bit reliant on synergy heroes though, because alone, without anybody really helping her deal magic damage to those heroes, she is very, very, very slow. If you have a hero that can efficiently deal magic damage to enemies and thus level up those aging debuffs fairly quickly, you will notice that this drastically helps her deal a whole lot more damage. We can kind of take a look at the opposite situation where we have no support, which was one of our initial tests that we did with a Wraec team, because I used the Wraec team before, and there we tried the same thing. So let's hop right into the fight. We once again have our Bonnie there. We have the classical Wraec team that I run with Thorin and Rainier teleport. And Thorin just goes in there, basically attacking. We don't really have a whole lot of magic damage on the team, basically just the Rainier. And Wraec is of course hitting the right enemy fairly quickly. My initial thought was, well, if he does that, then he might just end up spreading the debuff around of Bonnie. And while this is of course the case, yeah, he does spread it because he defeats the enemy that initially has it and then spreads it to other enemies. You can see 650k. First of all, this is because we have a very short fight, short duration of the fight. Bonnie is the hero that deals damage over time, so the more time, the more damage. And on the other hand, we don't really support her in any way through this team. There is not really magic damage, we don't have AoE magic damage, and this is really what you want, AoE magic damage, to make her work. So, which heroes do really work well with her? Well, the real hero, the best hero probably to use her with, was Tazi, because Tazi has a targeting pattern that very well fits her effect. What Tazi usually does is, she moves between the enemies. Where is it actually? Yeah. She then flies to the farthest enemy and applies the same effect to adjacent enemies, which is an AoE magic damage hit. So we have an AoE magic damage hit that she does, and that she also inflicts on the farthest away enemy, which at the beginning is the rearmost enemy of the enemy team. So that kind of works out well. She will directly pretty much fly to the enemy with the debuff, hit it, and this already helps us spread the effect. So Tazi, a very worthwhile combination. The other one that we tried is Talene. Talene also has AoE magic damage. In my opinion, a little bit worse than Tazi for this specific task, but nonetheless works. So this is basically what you can do. And already there are some teams that I saw where people are very happy about her working fairly well in their teams. I'm not too sure about this. I honestly struggled a little bit against the Dino teams. I struggled a bit against the faster teams. But if you build a stall team, that is something that I could see work. Because then we got to the 4 billion damage, and this is very, very good. Let's talk a little bit about PvE. PvE, we have a different story. We can pretty much drag out the fight a little bit longer. There are multiple teams where it's common to drag out the fight. And I have some interesting gameplay here from Endgame. Endgame showed me a fight here that I wanted to see with Arden in there. The good thing is, we run a lot of AoE magic damage dealers in PvE. We run Iron, for example, magic damage dealer AoE, Arden, magic damage dealer AoE, Carolina is a magic damage dealer and does AoE, so is Tazi, so we have a lot of interesting options here. And the situation and the thing that I have to say, I kinda didn't think she would do very well there, and I had to even think about it when I saw it, why that is the case. And it's not even her damage. We are fighting here against pretty high deficit, AFK stage 1767, so pretty strong. And, well, damage-wise, we saw she was out-damaged by Arden. We'll see another fight in a second where she's out-damaged even more by Carolina. And nonetheless, Endgame told me, well, there was this fight. I tried to do it with Arden. It didn't work. And then I put in Bonnie, and it worked. And we have two real big reasons for this. For instance, the debuffs, which include a haste debuff, which can help, because it allows the enemies to attack less often. And then, of course, there is the ult. And what the ult does is hits every single enemy. The ult it targets every single enemy. It's a little bit weirdly described in there, but it hits every single enemy. And every enemy with aging, and at this point, I mean, into the fight, that is every enemy. And I want you to keep a keen eye on that now. As you can see, there was stunned on every single enemy. And we stun every single enemy with aging for a base of 3 seconds. And we can enhance that with ultimate power to 4.25 seconds. So on every single ult, we have a 4.25 seconds full team enemy team stun. And that is pretty good. That is honestly pretty good. So that also explains why she can be very helpful on some of those stages. The problem with the damage is, like, if we go... And we can probably skip the rest of this fight as this just continue there. We can watch the numbers again. You can see she gets severely outdamaged there by Arden. If we now go ahead and we can kind of go into my stages without very well less deficit because I'm lazy, you'll see that there is quite a different situation here where her damage actually seems a lot better than it really is. Because she does quite well with her initial hits, with her initial ult and the initial hit of her abilities. But that doesn't necessarily mean that her damage is insane. There is like this point where normal damage dealers like a Carolina, like an Arden or something, or even a Tazi, just overtake her in terms of sustained damage dealt. And this is quite interesting for a hero that deals damage over time. You would think like, well, the more time, the more damage, but really the other heroes seem to work out a bit better in that way. So in this situation you can see how you could get the idea that she's like a god in PvE, because she just straight up outdamaged Arden by ×4. It's no longer the case if we go into the later stages, so a bit of a difference there, and you could probably replace Bonnie in this situation with multiple other heroes. So let's take a look at some stages where the difference is a bit more apparent, where we have, for example, a Carolina with her, which works pretty well. Carolina, very strong hero. We can see that the impact of a Carolina is a little bit higher there. It's a little bit higher. We of course have a resonating spell here, so a little bit less of a thing. Then again, if we ran the resonating spell on Bonnie, yeah, I'm pretty sure that wouldn't result in a much better. Here we also have, by the way, CC on Carolina, so it's an interesting thing there as well. But this team overall, like with the Iron, with the Temesia, with the Ulmus, Bonnie and Carolina, works fairly well. And I thought it was interesting when Endgame told me about this and said like, hey, this team could clear it. If I replaced Bonnie for Arden, it couldn't. Because the thing is, this team has no faction aura. Actually has no faction aura if we take a look at it. It's 2 Wilder, it's 1 Lightbearer, it's 2 Graveborn, it's no faction aura. And still, even if we put Arden in there, which activates a faction aura, it was still better for him. So the stun and the debuffs can really go a long way, despite her not being the great damage dealer. And if anybody tells you so, she really isn't. She is an okay-ish damage dealer, but not like really the best. So keep that in mind. What I expect from her, though, I can sadly not test that. I'm pretty sure she will outdamage Viperion in Ravage Draw. Currently, the team that I've been using for the Immortal Squad was something like this, with like Viperion here on one of the Vecnos tile. I'm pretty sure she will do fairly well there and will outdamage Viperion, as the Graveborn set in general also kind of works well with her. Because what we have here are also stat buffs. We can scale attack a little bit. We get a lot of attack on the heroes on those Graveborn tiles. So that works well because the damage over time effect scales from her attack. So if we have higher attack on her, that is in general really quite helpful. So that being said, we got an overview now about PvP. We got an overview about PvE. What would I say? Should you summon her? Well, she is not a bad hero at all. I wouldn't say she's a bad hero. By no means. We can enhance her a bit more. Charm-wise, by the way, I would recommend you go for the recommended one. Ultimate Power, Skill Power, I think that will work very well. For once you enhance the duration of your stun on your ult. For the other one, you also get a little bit more damage through the Skill Power. in your other skills, where, for example, we have the higher damage here when she casts her aging magic for the first time. And then we also have the teleport, the Nightfall shift, which also gets enhanced a little. So that's pretty good. I don't think she is like the almighty solution to PvP. I don't think she will do that well against, let's say, a Diana team, which is okay. I don't think she will do that well against teams that just have a lot of AoE and strike fairly fast, like the faster teams. It remains to be seen if she can build a sustained team that can last long enough to make her really worth it. Her damage isn't bad. Her damage is actually pretty good. Is she an endgame PvP pusher? Not for her damage. Mostly like for her aging and for the stun, but not really for the damage. The damage is just better on other heroes. We have to accept that. Is there an option though? Well, to maybe use her in early game? I don't think so. Like, especially if you don't have her at Mythic Plus, she is so weak that I would rather go for other heroes. What I do think though, I think she's the second best choice for A tier Graveborn, which initially puts her on your wish list. So I think the way it's going to work out is you are going to go with Sylvina and you're going to go with her on the wish list. And if you now go for the rate up, I think it is kind of a bad idea, honestly. Because what you do essentially is you summon a Graveborn hero through rate up that you don't really need right now, that you can probably very easily summon once the rate up ends, because you can put it on your Graveborn A tier wish list, where the likelihood that you get a few copies of her is fairly high, and you take away from your chance to summon one of the heroes that we get next season. I honestly think getting like a Lore Sun next season would probably be a better idea. You also get 2 more Graveborn heroes if you want to upgrade your Graveborn roster a little bit. I think that is like something that you should rather keep in mind. For this season, well, you for once have the players that summon any hero anyway. Let's do summon, by the way, because I feel like it. That summon any hero and every hero anyway. In that case, it doesn't really matter. If you rarely do summons, I think, like from the rate up side, the ones that you really wanted this season were like Sonya and Tazi. Those were the ones that I think you should have really taken away from the season. Like taking Bonnie now is worthless. I don't think switching a hero to her is that great of an idea. I think like Zimbat has shown that he's strong, for example, as damage dealer for the Lightbearer faction in Ravaged Realm. Hugin, I would keep Hugin. I think Hugin is a pretty potent supporter, but he would be like a hero I would understand if you switch him, even though I wouldn't necessarily recommend it. I wouldn't necessarily recommend it because like he's also a pretty strong hero. So I don't see her going into rate up. I don't see somebody that doesn't do every single rate up, summon her and do well with it. I think you can easily get her throughout the next season over time, and there is no rush to actually go for her, as you can probably replace her in most game modes fairly easy with another hero. Because even if endgame couldn't clear for this one stage with Arn, nonetheless you would probably have like 95% of the power with that Arn. So that is probably alright in that sense. Yeah, tell me your opinion down in the comments. Probably, as I said, second strongest A tier Wilder, first one being Sylvina. I kind of like her. I will test her more in PvP, and I want to go in a little bit more into that PvP side of it, because I want to show a little bit more there. Granted, this is not the side that you should focus on, at least until you reach like an end game worthy account with a few Supreme Plus heroes at least. PvP just doesn't give a ton of it. So, but I will make a video about that, and we will see. So tell me your opinion down in the comments. I hope this video helped you in your decision whether or not you want to summon her. And with that, I wish you a great day. We'll see us in the next one.